Ladies and gentlemen, what's going on? We are back. We got episode number 120 of the Club and Sub podcast. This week we're doing UFC Vegas 283. We are talking UFC 283. I never get this right. We are in Brazil this weekend, not in Vegas. Doing Glover Teixeira, Jamal Hill, co-main event, Brandon Moreno, Davidson Figueiredo. We are joined tonight by our friend of the podcast, Shawn Orr, who you can find on Twitter at Shawn Orr. Shawn, any thoughts on this card? Anything you want to throw out there? Anything you're looking forward to?
What was it? Mike's MMA's pick said, what was it? Pretty ladies and hot weather and pretty ladies. We're in Brazil. we're live. I'm excited, man, because we're all big Glover fans here. I think the card is kind of awesome in general, so I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, same. We also, as usual, we got me, John at MMA Fox, and Lags at Danny_Lags. Lags, any thoughts for you before we hop into this?
Well, I love pay-per-views, as anybody always does, but having two title fights at the top and Glover in the main event, obviously, Team Glover, you love to see it.
Yeah, I'm pretty pumped for it. Honestly, it's like last week felt like a decent fight night, and this is a pretty good pay-per-view. And of course, the UFC, in typical UFC fashion, is going to take, two pretty good cards and follow it up with maybe the worst card they've ever created next week. But you know what? We're here to talk about this week. So here we go. UFC 283, first fight of the night. We got Daniel Marcos. He's taking on Saimon Oliveira. Shawn, any strong thoughts here?
Oh, yeah. I think you and I are going to be opposite on this one. So I took Daniel Marcos in this spot. I took him at, I think it was plus 163, plus 165. Looks like best price right now is plus 132. That's on FanDuel. I think it's still fine, personally. To me, I just see it as a pretty even fight overall on the money line side. I think that if I had to rate their skills individually, I'd say that it's likely that Daniel Marcos has the better striking game. I think that Oliveira probably is the more powerful of the two, but I think that Marcos will have the better movement while he isn't exhausted. I would say that Oliveira probably has the better grappling here, but, we just don't know because this Marcos guy, he was pretty much he wasn't even fighting for months. He comes onto the Contender Series. He fights. He wins. So there's a lot of what ifs. It's just I think Oliveira's strength of schedule is pretty weak overall for his record. Marcos is undefeated. So, yeah, I'm taking the Marcos side and then also the over 2.5 I took. I think the price on that is pretty bad, pretty good.
What was the price on that?
I took it at like minus 115. I think it's still there.
I think it's still around evens, to be honest with you.
I think that it over should be like 65% here, in my opinion, because it's really predicated on like one of them death gassing and the other guy somehow upgrading their cardio or an Oliveira guillotine, which how much can you really rate that if Marcos isn't going to be doing too much wrestling?
Yeah, fair enough. That's a good point. Lags, what about you? Any thoughts here?
Yeah, so I'm also on the Marcos side. Played him for a unit plus 150. I get it. It's a pretty low-level fight, but, Shawn broke it down at least in terms of striking pretty well. I think Marcos slight edge on the feet, while Oliveira, yes, bigger hitter. But cardio edge, I think slight edge in Marcos, and he's shown decent enough takedown defense to where I don't think Oliveira's telegraph takedowns are going to be too much of an issue. So, yeah, I think it should be closer to pick him, quite frankly.
Yeah, so I had some early Oliveira dog money. For me right now, the number is right on market. It's kind of interesting because I don't particularly disagree with what either of you guys said. I more or less think Marcos is probably the better boxer, but minutes standing are likely competitive, high volume, reasonably high variance. I kind of trust Oliveira's gas tank just a tad more than I do Marcos's. I don't think either has the best gas tank in the world. And kind of to your point, Shawn, it's I agree it's hard to know what to make of Marcos's takedown or Marcos's grappling in general, but my gut feeling is it's not very good just from some of the stuff I saw him do, in the Lewis fight. Not that I think Oliveira is a particularly great grappler, to be honest, but I guess I look at it and I'm like, Oliveira getting 1 to 2 takedowns is probably enough for me to favor him outright, or the potential to get a couple takedowns is probably enough for me to favor him outright. And I just kind of lean his way with in terms of finishing equity just because of the submission upside. So yeah, I mean, I made Oliveira a small favorite. I don't really have any interest here at the current pricing. But this next fight, though, this is an interesting one. It was especially an interesting one up until today when some people we know absolutely blew this line out of the water. It's Cody Stamann taking on Luan Lacerda. What do you think here, Shawn?
Oh, I don't know. I know everybody's like uber excited. Oh, Cody, he's gonna crush this guy. And I just like look at Cody's career and like, when has he been crushing people? I don't really understand why people are so high on Cody at this point. Like, if anything, the guy has been an enormous disappointment in the UFC. He hasn't really moved. He hasn't moved camps. Everything I've heard of when he goes and trains elsewhere, it's not like he's like some amazing performer based on what people say. So I don't really think he's particularly that talented. And I think he's kind of at the end of his career. For the most part. That said, Lacerda, we just don't know much. He looks like a very creative jiu-jitsu guy. He's Aldo's boy. That's why he's in the UFC. I think I would, if I was trying to be a prudent bettor here, I would just cap topside on Stamann at minus 300 tops for me and just call it that and remove a lot of the variance that I think is possible here. And if I were to play any of the lines that are available, it would be Cody KO at plus 400. But I'm passing. What do you guys think?
Legs, what are your thoughts? Anything?
I don't think Lacerda's striking as much, and I don't think his wrestling as much. He's basically a jiu-jitsu guy, so I think it's a pretty layup spot for Cody. Like, Cody's just a solid guy, really. I get it. Nobody's really trying to lay like minus 300 on Cody. I get it. I understand it. But yeah, Cody's just a solid guy. Solid, serviceable guy, though. Like top 15, borderline top 15 guy.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't really rate Lacerda that much. I feel like he could win a couple fights just from like getting heel hooks or weird shit on the mat. You know, I feel like that's kind of how he's going to win UFC fights. But kind of to Shawn's point, like Cody is almost, I think there's a good case for betting the KO just because I do think Lacerda looks to me like a guy who wilts if he doesn't get the fight to go his way. But Cody historically is just such a nothing finisher that it's like, I mean, we've seen him get submitted before. It isn't like he hasn't gotten submitted. And so I would almost put like him and Lacerda at like an even with finishing equity. And if that's the case, it's like, how do you really get to like minus 400, minus 500? So like, I'm kind of with you. I think Cody minus 250, minus 300 was fine to cap it at. I guess I understand the passion. I think all three of us enjoy fading these debutantes with like established UFC fighters, but like I don't generally like I enjoy fading those debutantes with guys like Razak Al-Hassan who can like put your head through a wall, or even guys with like moderate power who have some upside in terms of finishing, like not with pillow-fisted, generally fairly tepid fighters like Cody Stamann. So yeah, I mean minus 300 is fine, but I think running to the windows here does not make terribly much sense. Moving on, though, we got the fight of the night here. We got Zara Farren. She's taking on Josiane Nunes. Legs, what are your thoughts here?
Well, I told John Morrison I was going to mention him on this part of the breakdown. And yeah, for sure. Zara Farren, in my opinion, as he would like to say, she's a role player. And she's here playing the role of making 145 pounds because not many people can. Because Josiane Nunes, for whatever reason, struggles to make 135 pounds and she's a midget. So, but no, I think Nunes rolls her, quite frankly. And I think Farren gets her walking papers after this fight. So not much to say.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to add here. I guess what I'll say is I saw minus 550 on Josiane Nunes and I was like, Oh my God, Farren's got to be a must bet here. I turned on her tape pretty much right away, watched literally 4 minutes. I was just like, yeah, I have zero, no interest at all. I mean, she's not a real fighter, you know? It's like this woman fought basically nobody, then came to the UFC to get killed by Felicia Spencer because they have trouble finding 145-pound women. Didn't fight for a year, got killed by Megan Anderson, and then hasn't fought for 2 years. Now she's almost 40, and now she's fighting Josiane Nunes. I don't have a strong feeling about it other than that Farren's getting put in there to do a job. What do you think, Shawn?
Man, I just with the UFC, I just look at this less about who am I going to bet with Nunes and Farren, and I think to all of you out there in the audience, if you guys have a daughter and you want to set them up for life, just put them into a kickboxing class, put them into a jiu-jitsu class. They're going to make the UFC. Thereafter, they can do whatever they want with their life. They can immediately become affiliate marketers. They won't have to work a day in their freaking life because literally any warm body will make it into the UFC if they're a female. So I look at this fight. I haven't really taped it. I don't care. So maybe by the end of the week, I will tape this fight, but all I got to say is anybody who has a daughter who's struggling to find themselves and you want to set them up, just put them into martial arts. They will be a UFC fighter one day.
Well said, Shawn. Well said. I do not have a daughter, but if I did, that's what I would do. Moving on, though, I'm going to have a bet here eventually. I'm waiting to see what the market does. I have a feeling you guys may disagree with me. But we got Nicholas Dalby taking on Warlley Alves. And I like Nicholas Dalby here, to be completely honest. It's a weird take. I've never been a particularly pro Nicholas Dalby guy throughout my life. I have bet Warlley Alves in the past. But it was kind of alarming going back through Alves' tape. I don't know, because he hasn't fought in 2.5 years. Maybe I was just a lot worse at this, like the last time I taped him. But he's really not very good. He's an explosive athlete. He hits very hard. Obviously, he's got explosive leg kicks. He's got a good guillotine. But he's so open to be hit. He empties everything in the first couple minutes of just about every fight. Like the only time in his career he's ever looked good in an extended fight was against Sergio Moraes. And Sergio Moraes was so gassed he couldn't stand up 4 minutes into that fight. So it's like, how much do I really even want to take? How seriously do I even want to take that? And then it's like Dalby, and it's like, yeah, Dalby's 38. I'm sure Shawn's going to bring it up, but the man's showing his ass all over Denmark on piers every morning. He doesn't look like a serious fighter. He didn't look great against Claudio Silva. But people forget this. Claudio Silva once upon a time won a decision against Leon Edwards. He also subbed Nordine Taleb. The guy is the worst looking MMA fighter in history, but for whatever reason is a motherfucker to deal with. I don't know why that is. It just happens to be the case. 2 fights ago, Dalby was in a 50-50 fight with Tim Means. 3 fights ago, he beat Daniel Rodriguez in a close fight. I think he's the sharper striker here. I think he's in danger very early in this fight, but I really do think he's the better boxer. And if he can avoid just getting killed in the first couple of exchanges, I kind of think he takes over this fight. I don't make him like a big favorite or anything, but I just kind of think the cardio upside on the Dalby side is enough that he should probably be a small favorite. So I'll likely have a Dalby bet. Mr. Orr, what do you think?
I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth. This guy is showing his ass all over freaking Denmark or wherever the hell he's from. You go to this guy's Instagram page, it's like a live journal. He's just lamenting his life in the captions. Oh, everything's terrible. And then he's just ass naked, ruining the real estate values of homes all across canals in Europe. So this guy, he's 38. I would never bet on this man because his entire equity is decision-based. I don't care how gassed Warlley is. Dalby's unlikely to find a finish, in my opinion, just the way he fights. I agree with you, though, theoretically. I think he has the better movement. He's able to string together combinations a little better than Warlley, but I'm going to go with the younger guy here. I think he's going to win. Full disclosure, though, it's not a super passionate take. I got an early line on him, plus 150. Please don't, Quinn. We've seen your body weight, Quinn. That would be nothing but bone. That'd be a skeleton ass. So if I were to play Worley right now, I would personally just take the ITD and leave it at that. But it's okay to pass. What do you think, Wags?
It is okay to pass.
I guess I'm more so in like the middle of you two guys. Like I lean on the Alves side, not strong enough on a bet. But yeah, I think obviously Early's hell to deal with. I think he's got the power upside. I think he has the grappling upside. Obviously, the cardio is the biggest talking point in this fight. But like, I don't think Dalby's anything special. Like you could say like, oh, he's a decent hitter, decent footwork, but like, other than that, I don't think he does much well. I don't think he's a great MMA fighter, quite frankly. So I get it's a high volatile fight because it's two untrustworthy guys, but I lean more on the Alves side. I think he's got more finishing upside as well.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough. I knew I'd be on an island here. Now, this is an interesting one, and I'm very curious to hear everybody's takes here. We got T-Rex, Terrence McKinney. He's died multiple times, including every time he's gone past 3 minutes in a UFC fight, taking on...
He mentions it all the time, too.
Yeah. Ishmael Bonfim. Shawn, what do you think here? Do you have a strong take?
I don't think I'm going to say anything that others don't already think or are going to say. I think that Terrence, if he gets his wrestling going early, I think he's going to have some success here. I think he's probably the better grappler of the two. He might be able to find a submission, but that said, even just watching the tape on some of these submissions that Terrence is hitting, they're against really bad grapplers. Ziem, he just looked clueless in some of these positions. So I don't really rate that finish too highly. Terrence is obviously a bit of a head case. We've seen him post on Twitter. We've seen him gas out 5 minutes, into a fight, 4 minutes into a fight. That guy, Ghost Pepper, the last fight, that guy, he literally trains with a Hollywood stuntman. Like I found before that fight, people are like considering to bet this guy. And then I found that his head coach was a Hollywood stuntman who had a stand-up comedy routine that I think MMA Giga Chat actually might have bought on Amazon just to watch it. It was just terrible. So who cares about that win? And Bonfim, if he remains okay in this fight for the first, 4 or 5 minutes, I think that he suddenly becomes, 85% to win, past the 4 minute, 5 minute mark. Maybe you could give Terrence some credit, say 6 minute, 7 minute mark. But I think Bonfim's going to win just because of how Terrence fights. So that's going to be my pick. I'm going to play Bonfim and be okay with it. I think he's one of the better spots for me on a money line side.
What do you think, Lags?
For starters, obviously, we had the first Bonfim brother. They both seem like stud prospects. Obviously, everybody's talked about them for sure. And to me, obviously, this fight comes down to the pace and whether or not Bonfim can deal with that early. And I think that's just the big question. And more so, like for me, McKinney fights going down the road, I'm just more so trying to avoid just because there's a huge variance factor into it. So I'm fine with passing.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and I haven't decided if I'm going to go pre or later. On the one hand, we talk about it all the time, and I do have to give, McKinney credit for the level of competition he's fought, which has obviously been comically higher than what it. Well, Bonfim did fight Renato Moicano when he was 19. But yeah, principally, I agree with you, Shawn. And it's like, my thing is, I've seen a couple people be like, well, what if McKinney dials it back? And I'm curious to hear what you guys think of this, but I don't get the sense that McKinney is any kind of a technical wizard. I feel like, much like you saw with Randy Costa when he tried to dial it back, some of these guys, like their value derives from the fact that they are so aggressive early in fights. When those guys who aren't that skilled dial it back, they just get picked apart by better fighters. I don't think McKinney can come out here and be calm Terrence McKinney. I think that's going to result with him just eating a lot of body shots, gassing out, and getting finished anyway. Most likely. So, look, McKinney could definitely finish him here. I know you guys were all in the same chat, and I know Saeed Jacob Kakramanov was in there for a while, who is Terrence's boy, but he did say about a month ago that Terrence is going to knock this dude out cold with a knee up the middle. So take that for what you will. But I'm with you, Shawn. I'm with you, Shawn. Like I kind of feel like Bonfim has to be the side. It's just like, maybe McKinney is that rare prospect, like the Conor McGregor type prospect who's so dynamic early in his career that he's finishing fights in round one at a 50 to 60% clip, but I don't really buy it, to be honest. I mean, look, he's explosive, he's dangerous, he's likely going to finish many, many fights, but I think Bondram's a decent prospect, and like a guy who's tough and pretty durable and hits the body just seems like inherently a nightmare for Terrence McKinney. So yeah, I don't know if you guys have any other thoughts, but like I'm on the Bondram side. Well, like, do you guys think Terrence can like fight restrained and win a fight that way?
So I'm going to say no. And really the main point I would talk about would be the Dober fight. Like about halfway through that first round, you kind of see his defense. His head does not move. He doesn't move his head off the center line at all. I mean, he is super fucking hittable. So I don't think there's a toning it down. He just has to put pressure on, put the pace on from the get-go.
I think Saeed Yaqub's read, though, is correct with the knee. Listen, they're boys, but I will say Saeed Yaqub, rest in peace from our chat, no longer with us. But he actually is pretty epic at picking winners, I will say. So shout out to him. But he's biased. I do think the knee is a solid read because Bonfim does that, cover up style, peekaboo style defense. So maybe he could hit him with it. But at the same time, like Lags just said, McKinney's head is straight up in the air on a stick, ready to get left hooked. So I wouldn't be surprised by that either.
Yeah, and I don't think the books are trying to leave an underhang. And obviously they open the under 1.5 at like minus 200 really here. So
that's insane. It's probably going to hit, but that seems good. That does.
And everybody seems to be playing it too. But yeah, I get it.
I won't be getting involved on it. Moving on, the fight that got rebooked for the 5th time that nobody wants to see. We got Jailton Almeida, Shamil Abdurakhimov. Anything new to offer, Lags?
Well, I will say, since we were talking about unders there, this under 1.5 opened around like minus 300. Yeah, I mean, I was looking for a sneaky KO prop, to be quite frankly. But no, on DraftKings, they opened it like plus 180. BetOnline opened it like plus 300, obviously. And it's been bet down. But no, I think Jailton kills him. Yeah,
it's unfortunate. You hate to see legends like Shamil just get put, he gets fed to Sergey Pavlovich, and now they're just like, okay, you have one fight left on your deal. You want to get paid, go do a job against Jailton Almeida. I would love to fade Jailton, and I think there's going to be a time in the future when he fights some of these heavyweights who are a bit more athletic and younger where he does have issues. But I don't think this is it. He's going to cruise. I don't really have any interest in any of the props. Like, it's hard for me to set, like, I'm not opposed to prop, but it's like if I'm going to bet a prop, like betting something that's near even money just is not something I'm really trying to like step in front of, especially when it's like this could just be dealer's choice for Jailton. Do I want to KO him or do I want to sub him? So no interest for me. Any thoughts from you, Shawn?
Yeah, similar. It's just sad. And all I had to do was watch the Curtis Blades tape to see, I don't think Almeida is as good of a wrestler as Blades, but obviously his top control is a hell of a lot better than Blades. So I think because he's really smart with his jiu-jitsu. I mean, when he mounts you, you're pretty much screwed. I mean, you saw what he did to Danilo. Danilo's not a schmuck. He literally couldn't even move his hips one bit. And Shamil is very old. This is sad. He's probably going to get killed in round 1, dealer's choice, like you said.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah, I would say.
What I wish?
See what you were just talking about there, Shawn. Like on top, I think the physicality of Almeida is much different than Blades too. On top.
Well, look at how he's. Almeida is really impressive, and this is going to really whet the beak of the Brazilian audience that's looking for their jiu-jitsu hero. I mean, this guy barely punches. Obviously he's out there trying to do a Damian Maia at heavy and light heavyweight. But the way he's doing it is actually really smart because he's incorporating a lot of these newer MMA wrestling tactics to break his opponents down. One thing I will say with this guy, though, everything goes according to plan in almost all of his fights, except for that Contenders fight. If you rewatch that fight, there are some moments where you kind of raise an eyebrow a little bit at his decision-making. The other fights are pretty much just him kind of backing up his opponent and then shooting that power double into the cage. What happens if he doesn't get that in one of these fights? What does this guy look like? I don't think anybody knows.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because it's like I've been saying it for a while. Like I can't find his fight with Bruno Assis anywhere. Like I've seen many Bruno Assis fights, and I do not know how he won that fight. Like I would really love to see it. Like it was either because he gassed out or because, like you said, he was able to stuff the initial entry. But something's off there because a guy who's going to be a future UFC champion isn't losing decisions to 3-round decisions to Bruno Assis. Like I promise you, you know.
And it's funny you say that too, because Assis, I was taping something. I mean, I guess it was 4 or 5 years ago, but I was taping something the other day, a Bruno Assis fight. Who was it, against Jalen Fuller?
Yeah,
where I felt like he fought the fight of his freaking life. But I mean, the guy is sloppy, like you said. It's not like he's, I don't know.
Yeah, it's bizarre. It's bizarre. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we will see what happens. Anyway, moving on to another shit show here. Thiago Moises, Melixel Costa. I took a brief look at it. Honestly, if Moises was more reliable to fight to his strengths, I probably would have laid this at like minus 300. Obviously, he did in his last fight against Jagos. I think that was his last fight. But I just can't get over, his fight with Joel Alvarez, where it's like this dude had the clearest path to victory in the world, with Alvarez, who's just going to sit on his back and play jiu-jitsu against a high-level black belt. And instead, he just kind of sat back and let Alvarez blitz him out of the water. That concerns me, and it's always going to concern me in the future with Thiago Moises fights. And so, with that being the case, I'm passing. But I think he's got the skills to win everywhere here. He should be the better striker. And if he takes the path of least resistance and grapples, honestly, he should be able to make quick work of Costa and potentially sub. I don't trust Moises at this point. Like, the guy has shown too many times that if you go forward on him, his brain just shuts down. So it's a pass for me. Shawn, any thoughts here?
No, I'm passing. Moises is a guy who punches the clock and hangs out at the beach. He's not a minus 300 fighter. I'm passing.
What about you, Leg? You would know. He's an ATT guy, isn't he?
Oh, I'm not speaking with facts. I'm just looking at this guy, like the way he fights, and I'm like, he looks like he's hitting pads, and after that, he's going to the beach, right?
Yeah, I agree. What do you think, Legs?
So first, I was going to say, I think we did skip over the Lizza Bondram fight.
Oh, you're right.
Before this.
Wow.
But no, not a ton of thought. I don't think Costa's great, to be honest with you. I think the only problem for me with Moises is he's a bit low volume on the feet too. So
yeah,
I don't know. This is the guy who's going to shit in your apple pie, quite frankly. So, and I want no part of it.
All right, well, we're going to go backwards here. We got Gabe Bonfim.
Yep.
He's taking on Munir Lizza. Bonfim's chalked up here. Shawn, what do you think? Any interest on the dog?
I already took him at plus 160, Lizza. I took, what was it, I think 1.5. Because I think that, I'll just save some money for the inevitable, Bonfim. I favor him in round 1, so we'll see what happens. Lizza does let people get off on him. It's really going to be a matter of his durability and minding his P's and Q's, but I do favor Lizza's skill set technically over Bonfim. I do think that Bonfim is a better offensive boxer, not really sold on his defense. And I do think there's reason to doubt his endurance a bit based on some footage that we've seen. It's also reasonable to doubt his defense based on some footage we've seen. So I think if Lizza comes out and he's really, when he's coming out of the locker room and he's really ready for it, I think if he's aware of what's going on, I think that this could easily look like not 100% identical, but to the Razak fight, where this guy maybe gets himself a bit tired. I just need Lizza to not throw that ugly ass lead left hook to the body, because if he does that, he's getting knocked out.
So
in my
open.
opinion. Yeah. So yeah, Lizza's money line pre-fight, and then I'll look to live bet him.
Lags, what about you?
So I guess I'm a bit on the other side of the coin here. Not that I'm looking to lay the chalk on Bondram, but I think Bondram's a solid boxer, solid striker in general, and I think he's a bit higher volume here. Not a ton more thoughts really for me, but I like Bondram as a prospect, like I mentioned earlier. Both the Bondram brothers are solid.
Yeah, I like Lizza a lot here, to be honest. Mostly don't want to reiterate too many things what Shawn said, but I think he's spot on. I'm pretty sure Bonfim's got gas issues, to be completely honest. It hasn't manifested itself horribly yet, but like going back a couple fights ago in LFA, he fought a guy named Brenner Albert, who, clearly your classic Brazilian undefeated guy who's fought a bunch of guys that are 0-2 and, isn't going really anywhere in the UFC. And, you saw him hurt Bonfim bad in round 2 of that fight. And this is a jiu-jitsu guy who can't strike. And Bonfim looked like he was fading hard down the stretch of that fight. But again, the level of competition was just so low. He was able to get him out of there in round 3. And I feel like we've seen it in other fights from Bonfim regionally where it's like you can see his pace slows quite dramatically, but he's not really being pushed by his opponents. And it's like it's kind of easy to manage a poor gas tank when the guys in front of you are kind of content to back foot it and just let you jab them. Very different when the guy holds his ground and is returning fire. And I think he's going to run into that with Lizza here. Honestly, the line in and of itself, without any other breakdown, makes no sense unless you think Bonfim can grapple Lizza. And like Eldar Eldarov, who's a legit grappler, could not hold Lizza down. I don't really see any reason to think Bonfim could. Always possible he could snatch a choke, but I don't think a top clinic is even remotely in the cards in this fight. Sean touched on it, so did you, Lags. Bonfim may be the better boxer, but he's defensively open. Trey Water is also tall and long, who he fought on Contender Series. He was touching him up a bit on the feet, and Lizza is faster and hits a lot harder. Yeah, I think the first round's going to be close. It's possible Bonfim wins it and you get a good live line on Lizza. But I kind of think, the longer this goes, the worse it's going to get. I keep hearing about Lizza's output, but like the guy landed 140 strikes in his last fight. It's like, no, he doesn't like flurry combinations the best, but he is constantly working here. Yeah, I don't know. I don't like the fact that, it's like a boxer with no defense against a guy who can throw knees up the middle, who can throw elbows. Oh, and also, box with him and has a good gas tank and fought way better competition. Like, it just doesn't. I made Lizza a small favorite. I'm not like, minus 300, but I don't, this is the hardest fight of Bonfim's career by many magnitudes here. It makes no sense for him to be minus 185 in my mind. So I have a couple units on Lizza, and similar to Shawn, I more or less think, go in with 1 or 2 units pre here. And, if you get a close first round and a close line going into round 2, just keep adding. That's kind of where I'm coming from this with.
So I guess looking at these lines now too, how do you guys feel about, since you guys are on the Lizza side, obviously, the over 1.5 is minus 150?
I actually like that a lot, to be honest. Shawn, what do you think?
I've considered it, but I think that Bonfim might force, a crazy fight early. So that's all right. Like Lizza's has this tendency to kind of let people get off on him. Again, that's my one big question mark here with this guy is like, will he actually fight a little more coherently in round 1 where he's going to, try to maneuver his opponent instead of let me stand there and take 3 body kicks to the stomach, against, or in the case of Razak, he didn't have to stand there and take all that abuse, so like, we'll see what happens. But one thing I want to mention, and then you could answer the 1.5 question, John. But I think that Lizza is a better MMA fighter. Like you had mentioned the diversity of strikes, but Lizza does tricky things too that people overlook. He'll shoot a takedown just to drive you back so that he can hit you with a knee. He can hit you with an elbow. He does like tricky things like that a guy like Bonfim, who's just going to be wanting to trade 1-2s, is probably going to be getting surprised by and tired by. But yeah.
No, I agree completely. I kind of like that over 1.5. You do bring up a good point though, because it's like I guess Lizza could do what he did with Worley and Razak and just kind of let Bonfim flurry at him early in this fight. But you are right. If he holds his ground and fires back, like there's someone could go down here. And I don't. My biggest concern with Lizza is kind of to, both your points. It's like, I don't like how happy he is to rely on his chin. It's like he has a very good chin and he knows he has a very good chin, which is fine, except guys at 170 pounds hit really fucking hard and eventually it gets cracked. So yeah, I mean, that's a good point, but I made GTD here, like myself, like even money. So I don't think that's a bad look, to be honest.
You should take it then. Good Lord.
GTD, GTD's plus 150 right now.
No,
Yeah.
you're right. Actually, it's actually funny you say that because I'm looking at my sheet and I wrote even on distance. But here's the thing: is my props to watch were honestly Lizza's KO.
Yeah.
Even though I made it even, I think that there's a possibility that Lizza gets a nice finish here on this guy. So I don't know. I took money line.
Plus 350 is not bad. I mean, that's what I'm seeing. Plus 400, plus 350 for Liz's KO. That's pretty good. But yeah, I mean, moving on. Great fight here. Well, I don't know if it's I think it's going to be an entertaining fight. We got RoboCop, Gregory Rodriguez. He's taking on Bruno Ferreira. Lags, any takes here?
Bruno Ferreira's got big, powerful hands. That's about it, really. I don't think this guy's anything special. But again, like with RoboCop, he's not the greatest defensively either. So we could have a war on our hands. He doesn't really use his grappling path that obviously he has. But no, I'm honestly a prop to watch for me. And again, don't know if I'm going to end up playing it, but it starts round 2, around even money. I think these guys are just going to be a bit just hesitant to enter the pocket with each other, with the power coming back at each other. So yeah.
I'm thinking of laying the chalk with Greg Rod, to be honest here. This Bruno Ferreira cat is not it, in my opinion. I know he's got 9 wins and they're all via first round finish, but I gotta say, I do not see anything on tape that is particularly scary to me. Obviously, he hits hard, and yeah, Robo's been rocked a few times. I mean, he's obviously been got knocked out by Jordan Williams, but hot take, he fights through adversity probably better than anybody in the division. The dude got rocked bad by Jun Young Park, and instead of quitting, just bit the mouthpiece, swung harder. Basically got his skull kicked in by Chidi in the first exchange of that fight, and by the end of round 1 was literally beating him into the ground. The dude is as tough as it gets, and I just think, first of all, it's going to be hard for Ferreira he's smaller and he's got a shorter reach. I don't think it's going to be easy for him to close distance. I think if Gregory wants to, he can get on top of him and sub him easily. Obviously, he doesn't like to do things easily, so that probably won't happen. But honestly, I think he's minus 350 standing here. Ferreira pretty much is drawing dead to a KO, and Rod is just not he fought, in my opinion, Armen Petrosian is a much more dangerous and explosive fighter than Bruno Ferreira is. And Petrosian, he landed a lot in that fight, but he didn't really get close to cracking his chin. So I don't know. I think Rod's going to handle him, and I'm thinking of laying it if it keeps coming in. What do you think, Shawn?
I already did lay it. So I got reversed CLV'd a bit. I laid the minus 300. Yeah, I don't know. I just watched these guys' fights. I left after watching Bruno's fights thinking, this guy sucks. Why is he in the UFC? And I think it's an accurate assessment. I think if you're going to play him, it's going to be plus 600. It has to, be plus 600 for me. I think Gregory is minus 600 here personally. And I would only give Bruno ITD equity. Speaking to toughness, like you said, I mean, his literal brains were showing last fight and he just kept fighting. So I'm starting to think that, sometimes we make because I know I thought this about Gregory Rodriguez, but sometimes we'll be quick to judge. We'll be quick to judge a meme KO on somebody. And I think the Jordan Williams thing was, I don't think that that's replicable. And I think that basically what's going to happen here is Gregory is going to pressure this guy like he does everybody. He's going to land hammers on him, and this guy's going to fold. And yeah, outside of that, I mean, I'm seeing people betting Ferreira, and I guess I just don't quite understand it because just watching the guy's boxing, even he's throwing very sloppy, loopy shots. He's kind of darting in and out. So yeah, go Hobo. I'm going to lay more.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad idea. Dude, I mean, I made Gregory Rodriguez minus 230 against Tavares, when that was booked. It's how is he not minus 500 here? Brad Tavares is a top 20 guy. Yeah, I'm with you 100%. Go Hobo. Hopefully the money keeps coming on Ferreira, though. I wouldn't mind getting a better price. I wouldn't mind this price.
Why is it though? Can somebody, if anybody's in the comments, can tell us like what the hell is going on? Because like I watch this guy and he just looks like a typical Brazilian regional scrub to me.
I was just going to tell you guys the KO props plus money still
for Hobo.
Yeah,
I mean, is he going to get his finally get his
100.
submission though? Is he going to finally do it?
see, that's what's interesting too, because I was looking at the like the inside the distance lines. They have ITD at like minus 200, and then KO, like I said, like plus 100.
I would do.
And then his sub, I think, was it plus 235, if I was right.
Here's the thing too.
Plus 285.
I'm capping too for the idea that we don't know enough about Ferreira. So I put Gregory ITD at minus 185 for me, because who knows? You know, this guy, who knows? He keeps finishing his opponents. Maybe he has elite endurance. I don't know, you know.
Or is a Brazilian dog who just takes a beating for 15 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Chris Tione watching him eat 100 elbows in round 3 with 2 minutes left in the fight to kill everybody.
Yeah, great.
Moving on though, what a fight here. Speaking of putting old men away into bed, we got Shogun who he's taking on Ihor Poirier. I gotta say, I don't have the balls. I don't. But I mean, in my opinion, Shogun is the crystal clear money line side here. I mean, Ihor, this guy is just not it. I mean, you saw in his last fight when he fought an average fighter how bad Nikolai Negumereanu looked against, you know, how bad he looked against Nikolai Negumereanu, who is a poor fighter for the UFC. And Ihor looked like he was about plus 500 in that fight. Now he's taking on Shogun. He could explode him out of there early in this fight for sure. But there's no question, like Shogun at apex is probably minus 800 in this fight, like literally. And now he's plus 175. Look, I mean, I can't get the Paul Craig fight out of my head with Shogun, to be honest. He looked he looked like a handicap fighter in that fight and in his last fight with Little Nog. And he didn't look great against OSP. So it's like, I kind of get the line because young athletic guy could maybe knock him out of there. But the truth is, Ihor's got 4 minutes of gas. He's a bad striker and he's a terrible grappler. You know, if Shogun fights moderately conservatively, he can win this fight. He could potentially look like a favorite. I feel like he's at the cliff and he's already falling over it. It's just a question of how far down he is. Has he hit the bottom yet? And I don't know. What do you think, Shawn?
It's going to be a pass for me. I just taped it. Yeah, Shogun's, you know, he's old. So he's old. I know Ihor. I mean, a lot of things against Ihor. I mean, this guy was at ATT. He's not anymore. He's training back. Yeah, he was at ATT before that last fight. He's now back in Ukraine training with, you know, the soldiers, I guess. I don't know what's going on. But I don't know. He's basically got one attack or, you know, 2 attacks, inside leg kick, and then his 1-2, and he throws himself off balance. But let's be real here. It's very possible that he could just athlete Mauricio, like you said, which would be sad. I think if Mauricio shot for takedowns, he could probably sub this guy, but like, I just can't do it. I guess if you need action on every fight, just bet the under.
What do you think, Legs?
From a guy who did bet on Shogun against Paul Craig at like plus 170, I think he's at the bottom of the cliff. Even like rewatching that fight, it's like, it is so sad watching Craig just get on top of him and pound him out and then just tapping the strikes. It's like, well, he's done. That was putting the pin in it. And I thought he was retiring at that point. So I guess my only contrarian to everybody playing the under 2.5, why not the under 1.5 as well at minus 105? Because like Ihor, for what he is, he's an aggressive guy. He's going to come at you. Shogun's a guy who's obviously doesn't have usually great round ones, takes a lot of damage, falling off a cliff like we said, but he hits pretty hard. Coming to Brazil, retirement fight. I get it. I get the undertakes, but yeah, if anything, like Shawn said, under 2.5, under 1.5, that's where I'd be looking.
Yeah, fuck that.
You're kind of the probably one of the better people at totals that I know. Are you gonna bet those, Lags?
So what's interesting for me, at least like for the under 2.5, at least at minus 200, Shogun looks so cooked that like I get it. Ihor is super hittable, and like Shogun's KO path, it's there. But like, I don't know. Like I said, he just looks so cooked that I wouldn't want to lay that kind of chalk on it. I think Ihor, most of the finishing upside is with Ihor. Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, agreed. Moving on. This is a wild fight. Paul Craig, Johnny Walker. Shawn, any hot takes here?
No hot take for me. It's funny because if you look at these guys side by side career wise, I think if you like put it into a computer and calculated it with a computer, it would pick Paul Craig, to be honest with you. It would go, look at these wins this guy has. But it's not contextualizing the fact that this guy is just pulling wins out of his ass while he's just getting completely destroyed by people. I mean, his two most recent wins, and God bless him for them because I won on both of them, was, Jamal Hill, title challenger, and then Krylov, right? Are probably the two wins that are probably, having all the bots think that this guy is good.
And Goliath?
Oh, yeah.
Krylov, that was so dumb.
And Goliath. Yeah, so like, how do you bet on this guy other than submission? And to be honest with you, I don't think Johnny Walker, maybe I'm wrong, I don't think he looks like a terrible grappler. He looks okay. He looks fine. And like, I guess I just am predicting at some point Johnny Walker is going to lay a hammer on him and just knock him out. But I wouldn't pay Johnny Walker juice. So, I mean, what's the total at here? What is it? 1.5?
I played the 1.5 at 160.
You played the under 1.5.
I did play the under 1.5.
Okay,
so you're that.
John have a contrarian over.
You're that tick, though. I see it here at 160. Then the graph goes way down. So
I wasn't the Pepe minus 145 tick. I think that was him.
Nobody can beat that guy. I don't even think he works. He just sits there on best fight odds.
He's got a bot that runs it immediately.
He does. You played it though? You played 1.5 under? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
160.
Really, Craig is going to do Craig things, right? He's going to come at you. So I don't disagree with it. But yeah, I don't know. No bet for me.
And then to your point about the defensive grappling, I think Walker's takedown defense is pretty good. My question is, if he's actually put on the mat, his IQ is so low that Craig probably could stop him, like that for sure. But yeah, standing, these guys are glass cannons. Obviously, Walker's a huge explosive athlete. I like the under 1.5 minus 160. Not a huge play for me, just a unit, but yeah, I like it. I think it's a car crash from the beginning.
So I think I side with Shawn on the Walker grappling side of things. Like, Kutalaba, whatever you want to say about him, the guy is a gassy quitter, but he is like a really dangerous grappler early in fights. And like, he just got flat out grappled by Walker. He lost, but Krylov basically grappled with him all fight, never really got close to finishing him. He got 3 minutes of control himself. Like, I know Paul Craig beat Nikita Krylov, but let's be real. Nikita Krylov is a far more physical and dangerous grappler than Paul Craig is. Yeah, I actually, I kind of came to this realization after the line was already gone. I think the early Walker numbers were pretty good, to be honest. My biggest fear with like an under spot is like, it's not Johnny Walker, it's John Kavanagh. John Kavanagh has somehow turned Johnny Walker into a point fighter. I mean, you even go look at his fight with Jamal Hill. Like, Walker's best tool in that fight was his wildness and maybe being able to bum rush Hill and knock him out early. And instead, he just came out throwing teep kicks, the occasional jab. We saw the same thing with Thiago Santos. No hard engagements, even though Santos was old with deteriorating athleticism. Just teep kick, jab. Nothing really offering it to him there. And I worry that'll happen too. The best point to the counter of that, as you guys both mentioned, is that Craig's going to come for him. It's what Paul Craig does. He's going to come for him and come hard. So maybe he will bring out the inner beast to Johnny Walker. Or maybe it'll be the Ozdemir fight all over again, though, where Craig just keeps trying to pull guard. Yeah.
Plus it's in Brazil, too. Not to add some more narrative in this, too. But Paul Craig coming for him. It's going to be an intense stare down, intense face-off in the cage.
Here's the thing, too. One thing I'll say to John's point is ever since Johnny Walker quit the weed, he's been far less aggressive. So the green was turning this man into a maniac, apparently. And ever since then, he's just passive. But I don't know. Craig is going to scream in his face and make him fight, right?
Yeah. I mean, you would think so, but it just scares me because Walker just seems so uninterested in getting into big engagements at this juncture of his career. So, and like the idea that Walker could potentially end up consolidating top position is not nearly as crazy today as that would have been had you told me that 3 years ago. So I don't know. I don't feel strongly about it. If the line comes back down, like I've seen a lot of like people saying they're betting Craig, but just the line's not moving. So if it came back down like below minus 185, I actually think I would take the poke on Walker, to be honest.
Yeah, it looks like it's going up. It's minus 190, 200 on most spots now. So.
Yeah. So I mean, I do think he's the side. Moving on. Good fight here. Good fight. We got Jessica Andrade taking on Lucky Lauren Murphy. Andrade is one of the biggest favorites on the card here. Lags, do you think the line is right?
I mean, broadly, I would say, like, obviously, like, minus 500 in a fight where I don't think it's super, super likely that Andrade finishes, because Lauren, in terms of 3-round fights, like, she's never been finished. She's pretty tough in general, pretty strong girl. That, in terms of the line, is interesting, but I don't think Lauren trembles Andrade in any facet, quite frankly. I know I'm saying quite frankly a lot. I need to stop doing that. But yeah. But no, I think this is a great spot for Andrade in Brazil, obviously. She could get a great KO finish, but yeah, it's a good spot.
I come down on the other side here. I'm going to bet Lauren Murphy. I'm also going to bet the over in this fight. I can't unsee, I've bet Jessica Andrade a lot throughout her career, but something I can't really unsee is that Valentina fight. And look, it's Valentina, so it's like, I'm not saying that she lost to Valentina. Completely acceptable loss. The way she got physically mauled and just abused by Valentina, though, like Valentina got cage pushed hard by Jennifer Maia for 9 minutes. She got, out physical by Taila Santos. Valentina is the best women's fighter in the world, but she's not very strong. It's arguably been her biggest deficiency as a fighter. And Andrade, who, is built on being a tank and strong and not that technical, showed she wasn't it. And at 125, that's a concern because Andrade's only other fight there, it's Chukagian, who she KO'd with a body shot pretty early, but she looked like she was tiring in that fight. And then it's Cynthia Calvillo, who's a 115-pound fighter, who basically wilted the first time she got hit hard in that fight. Lauren Murphy, she's got her problems, but she's a scrapper. She's tough. She's not really afraid of anyone. The truth is everybody remembers the Andrade KOs, but they forget stuff like Claudia Gadelha hurting her badly on the feet, Tisha Torres hurting her badly on the feet, Angela Hill hurting her badly on the feet. Andrade gets hurt a lot because she's very, very, very open to hit for as dangerous as she is. What always her default has always been is to go to the grappling. The thing is, I don't think she's going to have much grappling success here. She could land takedowns, but Shevchenko struggled to control Murphy, and Miesha Tate couldn't get her down at all, who's much bigger than Andrade is. So I don't really think Andrade is very live to maul her on the mat. And I actually think on the other side of that, if they tie up in the clinch, there's a non-zero chance that Murphy is much stronger than Andrade and can actually kind of push her around in there. Look, all that is to say, I favor Andrade. I made her about minus 200 here. I think that's fair. Her pace, her youth, their power, give her that. But I like that, and I like the over. I mean, Valentina took 4 rounds to finish Murphy. Nobody else has. She's hung in there and boxed in the pocket with a lot of people. I like the over a lot, and I think the Murphy line is wide. What do you think, Shawn?
Yeah, I think money line side, it's pretty obvious that it's kind of wide. But that said, I'm not really like clamoring to play Murphy in this spot personally, just because I don't know. The type of opponent that Andrade typically struggles with is going to be somebody who's elusive, and I'm not really seeing, lucky fleet of Flip Murphy at age of 39, like going out there, Sugar Ray Leonarding, Jessica Andrade. So I think there's going to be some exchanges here. And I do rate Andrade's power for WMMA. And I just kind of looked through a lot of the hitters Murphy's been against. It's basically none. So I think she's going to be getting hit hard for the first time since Valentina. I think that you can't fault Andrade for her loss to Valentina and not do the same for Murphy. So I think they both got schooled by her. So yeah, I think that based on the lines, though, if I had to I just see so many outcomes here, but based on the lines, if I had to make a play on every fight, it would probably be the over. Just because you can't price Andrade KO more than 25%, probably 35% generously. And I price Murphy finish probably virtually zero. So, yeah, over makes sense.
Agreed. I agree. Moving on. Oh, God. Gilbert Burns, Neil Magny. It's a cool fight. And I want to bet Neil Magny in every single fight because I always feel like he's undervalued. And I tried to find an angle here. I really did. I just couldn't really find it, unfortunately. The truth of the matter is Burns can handle him however he wants. The bottom line is Neil Magny can't take leg kicks. How many times do you have to see it? The guy eats 2 leg kicks and his leg is basically disabled. Burns kicks like a mule. Magny basically has no power and is easy to hit if you pressure him. Burns does pressure. Magny is not a great defensive wrestler against strong fighters. Burns is a pretty good offensive wrestler and very strong. Magny's defensive jiu-jitsu has been somewhat suspect in the past. Burns is an elite jiu-jitsu player. Magny needs this fight to get extended and for Burns to use a ton of energy early and gas out horribly to win this fight. Skill-wise, the fight's not close. I don't think, one of my biggest issues with Burns is always I think he's a bit fragile, but Magny just doesn't really have, the horsepower to get Burns out of there, in my opinion. And so if Magny is not very, 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 very unlikely to finish, it's well, a 3-round fight, is he likely to win a decision when a gassed out Burns can probably just default to grappling him and taking him down? We saw what Chiesa did to him when he was gassed out. He just took him down and laid on him. I don't see why Burns can't do that. I think he's got the preponderance of the finishing upside in this fight. I think he's got the large majority of decision equity in this fight. I think the line's fine. What do you think, Shawn?
Yeah, Burns is one of these guys who just keeps getting better, and Magny's at the end of his career, I feel. Yeah, he got a submission. I think a lot of us bet on that. It's a hilarious comment by Mbe. She's coming at you tonight. Yeah, to me, this fight pisses me off because it's just another indication that the sports books are getting slightly better at MMA odds. Because I think that they've deliberately made the winner quite wide and making you get taxed for all of the potential shenanigans that can happen in this fight. So yeah, I think Burns wins this fight. I think it's closer just based on shenanigans and variance. So no play for me. If I were to play anything, it'd be Burns ITD.
Legs, how about you?
Yeah, not really going to hash any points. I think Burns ITD, if you were going to make a play on this fight, would probably be the best one to do. But yeah, ultimately it's a pass for me.
All right, moving on. Co-main event of the evening. Part 4. Davidson Figueiredo versus Brandon Moreno. Shawn, do you have any hot takes from this fight that we've seen nearly 75 minutes of?
Yeah, I think Jonah Shiffy said it the best. He was like, if anybody thinks they're finding an edge on a fight where there's an hour and a half of footage, they're probably disrespecting a market and an efficient market. So I kind of agree with him in that point. That said, if I were to pick somebody in this fight to bet, I don't care about home court advantage. I think it'd probably be Moreno for me. I think I would back the youth, the lack of horrendous weight cut and the volume side in this spot. I think that a lot has to go right for Figueiredo to win fights. And I'm not saying that can't happen, guys. Figueiredo is clearly very skilled and he makes things happen for him in fights. That's evident after this many fights where we've seen him use his abilities to stop people and to win moments. But I'm just saying, at a certain point, you got to back a volume guy when the line is even. So I would bet Moreno, but no play for me. I'm going to wait on these totals. I hope that the people keep betting that under, and I will go over.
What do you think, Legs?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Shawn here as well. Like, I think Moreno, obviously clear minute winning upside here. Davidson kind of needs to obviously get those knockdowns or steal rounds with those big power shots. I don't have any really strong thoughts as well. Like, I lean the over as well as you. Minus 150-ish, not a bad play.
Yeah, I have a unit on Moreno, like plus 102 that I took like a month ago. I think the line bird is fine. Could maybe be a bit wider on the Moreno side. I guess for me, I think the big differentiator for me here is like, I think we saw the best possible version of Fig's career in the first fight. We then saw him get completely drubbed in the second fight. And even in the last fight where he won, if you look at that fight and contextualize it, Moreno won the vast majority of minutes in that fight. There were several points in that fight where it looked like Figueiredo was starting to fade hard. He was eating shots clean over and over and over again. And ultimately he bailed himself out with 3 knockdowns. And to Shawn's point, that is what he does, right? He has that potential in him to hurt people and, pull fights back. The thing is, Moreno is like all-time durable. So could he knock him down 3 times again and like steal 3 rounds? Yes. I mean, it's possible, but I don't think it's likely. And it's like, we look at the huge sample here. Moreno's consistently outlanded him in every fight. In the last 2 fights, the second fight, he absolutely shit kicked him. And in the third fight, he largely dominated minutes throughout that fight. So yeah, to Shawn's point, he's 29 years old. The guy's a good fit for the division. He's crazy durable. He's crazy aggressive against a 35-year-old Fig who clearly looks like he's declining, has a terrible weight cut, and might be getting a bit on the fragile side here. I think you have to make Moreno like minus 150 in the spot, maybe minus 125. But I think small favorite Moreno makes a good deal of sense. But I'm with you guys on the over, though. Like Moreno, even in the second fight when he hurt him bad, he couldn't finish. It took him really getting to his back and Fig kind of quitting to submit him there. Like I think the GTD should be like minus 185 in my opinion.
And then I think you'll probably have a lot of people also saying that like, oh, it's a close fight, goes the distance, Figueiredo, it's in Brazil. So bet Figueiredo. Well, people in Brazil, it's capable of Brazilian fighters to lose in Brazil. It's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. You wouldn't know it based on people's comments on Twitter. Apparently,
it doesn't need to be talked about for every fight. We can mention it at the beginning of the podcast. It is what it is, but it's not a main talking point.
No.
Well, what's interesting? I went back and looked at this like 2 years ago. I had looked at like the last like 5 events in Brazil, and like across them, there was like 3 bad decisions and only 1 that went a Brazilian's way. You had Kelvin Gastelum outright rob Jacare in Rio. Like that. It's a nice narrative, but it doesn't really fit, the reality of how fights are judged down there. The judging's bad everywhere, but it's pretty unbiasedly bad.
So is it fair to say that if somebody makes this talking point repeatedly, they're probably xenophobic and we should call them out?
I think you could say that.
Cool. All right.
Moving on. What a fight here. Glover Teixeira, Jamal Hill going for the undisputed 205-pound title. Weird set of circumstances leading to this one. Ankalaev and Jan were the chosen ones, and now neither one of them is fighting for the title. This is the UFC, ladies and gentlemen. It is theater. Lags, what are your thoughts on this fight?
Well, first we got to address the talking point that you just brought up. It was so interesting to me that they made this fight like, is it the same night? Literally, I think it was the same night. So,
like an hour later.
That's crazy to me. I think this is honestly a good spot for Glover. I think obviously, I'll talk about this first. Mike Simame picks. Shout out to him first. Goodness gracious, by the way. This line, Glover as an underdog who has a massive grappling path against the guy who we just saw get ragdolled by Thiago Santos in the wrestling, who has no knees, who you mentioned already, Johnny Walker fight, 5 rounds, did nothing for 25 minutes. Yeah, listen, obviously Glover could get knocked out on the feet. I understand that, but I think the grappling path is massive enough that Glover warrants a small favorite. So I would probably end up having a small bet on Glover. But I love the under 3.5 rounds. I have that tied into a parlay.
Yeah, I have 2 units on Glover here. The thing is, like, if you told me Hill had improved his grappling enough and was able to either get up or defend takedowns and knocks Glover out, I mean, I won't be shocked. Glover's 43, Hill's reasonably young. It's MMA, and it's 205 pounds. But, like, at the end of the day, Darko Stosic took Hill down 6 times on 6 attempts. Thiago Santos was never a very good grappler throughout his entire UFC career, landed 6 rounds and got well over a round of control. So, can Hill get up? I keep hearing people say he's got good get-ups, but all I see him do generally is just butt scoot to the fence. The thing is, when you fade a guy with a top game like Glover, generally they tend to grab your post arm and pin you down. And so he'll have to demonstrate something else. Like maybe there's something in there that he has that we haven't seen. I think that's possible. But it's equally possible, and I would argue more likely, that when he gets stuck underneath Glover, he's in deep shit and things go downhill from there. You know, I know the Jiri fight happened and Jiri was able to explode out of positions, but Jiri's a crazy athlete. Like Hill's, I think, a better technical striker, but he doesn't have near the athleticism Jiri does. Like Jiri's just a wild man who was literally just using full physical explosiveness and strength to explode out of positions. No one else has done that to Glover in his entire career. I don't really think it's likely Hill does that. And so it's like, can Hill knock him out on the feet? Yeah, every round starts there, so he'll have his opportunities too. But I do think it's getting treated like Glover dies in the first or second exchange, whereas we have a large body of evidence showing that, yeah, Glover can be hurt these days. His durability is certainly declining, but he also still recovers like an animal. You know, he gets dropped and he gets up and comes back after you. Like, Hill's going to have to kill him. Like, and I do think, and I know you'll touch on it, Sean, but I do think once Glover gets to his legs, he's going down here. So I think the grappling upside alone, the jiu-jitsu upside alone, combined with the fact that Glover's probably not that likely to get insta-killed, has to make him a favorite in this fight. What do you think, Sean?
Yeah, I guess we're full steam ahead because Glover is probably my favorite side on the card, actually. And I know he's 43, but to me, it doesn't really matter. Yes, he's about 60 years old in MMA, you know, fighting age. But when you get to these heavier weight classes like light heavyweight, you know, special things can happen with talented fighters who have a skill set that is unique to the division. And with light heavyweight, there's really just not that many good grapplers. And Hill has not faced any of those good grapplers. Darko is not rated as a good grappler. Thiago Santos on those takedowns, guys, go back and watch it. He's got a rounded back. He is straight in the air, and that's probably because 2 of his knees are fake. So the guy is not known as a wrestler, and he was pacing Hill with some grappling. So you mean to tell me the guy who in the first grappling exchange against Southpaw Jiri Prochazka grabbed a single leg and literally lifted it in the air and dumped him on his head, you mean to tell me that he cannot do that against Hill? Like, who watches that and goes, yeah, I'm comfortable betting Hill? You're basically just betting, like, you know, that Glover gets caught with something, because Hill is going to get taken down in this fight. And when he gets taken down, he's getting submitted or TKO'd, in my opinion. I know it's maybe a bit crazy, but I think it's reasonable to price Glover at 65-70%, to be honest with you. That's just me. And I will be having a pretty substantial bet on Glover, both ITD and Moneyline. And who cares? That's how I feel. I've made a lot of money off this guy. People can keep doubting him, and I'll just keep making money. Look at Quinn.
True. And to add on top, of that, like, yeah, like Jamal could catch him, like you had mentioned too. But adding on top of that, like, you're going through a lot of hoops to say that he's just going to get up if Glover takes him down.
Yeah, right.
I think those 2 hoops are massive hoops that you have to jump through to make Hill a favorite.
Well, but even if that's the case, though, right? It's like, let's say first of all, no one just pops up against Glover, but like, let's say he can reasonably work to his feet here. It's exhausting with Glover on top of you. It also means then he has to disengage from the clinch, and you're assuming that like Glover can have zero success standing too, especially if they start to tire, which I'm just not sure is the case. Like, yes, Hill is a better striker for sure. But, you saw Wagiri was a better striker. And you saw, as the fight kind of extended, Glover start to pick up steam in that fight, start to get more confident in his hands. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. But, like, I'm with you guys, boys. It's right. It's War Glover this week.
Glover's strong as an ox, too, to add on to that.
Yeah.
This dude's a motherfucker. He's talking about old man strength. This man is strong as a fucking ox.
I just don't think people understand how much strength it takes to take someone in a single leg and lift them up over your head and dump them on their head. Like at 43, I mean, that's incredibly impressive, especially when it's a super freak athlete like Jiri. But to your point too, John, do people think the stand-up is just such a one-sided blowout that Glover's just this incompetent striker that can't defend any strikes? Like, that's the part that is really confusing to me. It's like, of course Hill has the striking edge because he's got the youth, the length, and he clearly has some very snappy hands, a lot of snap on these punches. But Glover is not some scrub. He's going to roll with punches and look for takedowns. So I just think people think that this is two one-dimensional guys fighting each other, but it's actually one-dimensional guy fighting an MMA fighter who also happens to be a specialist in the area that this guy stinks at. So why would you not bet him other than, I won't bet 43-year-olds. I get it, but like you got to take some risk. It's betting.
Yeah. Live a little bit. And that's like the other thing is it's like, I'd be a lot more concerned about Glover if Hill had demonstrated, like obviously John Jones could defend takedowns, but like at his peak, how Jones was very good at kind of skirting the outside. Hill hasn't really ever had to fight off the jab and move. Like Glover's going to go forward and Hill is generally just backs up. So it's like, what happens when he runs out of real estate? I don't know. I don't think there's a lot of reason to think that he has the ability to have like, Joanna Jędrzejczyk performance like she had against Jessica Andrade where she could just fight off the jab for 25 minutes. I just don't think we've seen that. So we'll see though. With this podcast is on Glover. Some other people, like my friend Evan here, they're riding the Hill wagon, but we're rooting for Brazil this weekend, boys. Mexico and Brazil. Moreno, Glover, we're going to ship it. Guys, thanks for coming out tonight. Shawn, you want to tell them where they can find you? Tell them about your show, et cetera, et cetera.
So myself and the king of split decisions, Timothy Troiano, will be doing a live spaces. We do a spaces every Saturday morning. We try to give people some closing line bets, not tell people, hey, I got this great line, No, we try to give you some bets that are available right now. And then also I always do this. I plug Narco and Martians live spaces. I know all of us go into it on fight day. Definitely go check that out for some good live betting. But yeah, I appreciate you guys having me today. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, Shawn, thanks for joining us. You can find him, guys, at Shawn Orr. If you like the show, please drop a like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. As always, you got me, John, at MMA Fox, and Lags at Danny_Lags. Take it easy, guys. We'll see you next week. Good luck.